Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, November 18th Finance Committee meeting. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Kroll. Councilor DeBona. Councilor Harris. Councilor Hughes. Councilor Liang. Councilor Mahoney. Councilor McCarthy. Councilor Palmucci.
Present.
Chairman Kane.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Good evening. So tonight, we're here to review the 178 Old Colony Avenue Special Education Learning Center. It's an appropriation for $8.5 million. My colleagues should be in receipt of a package in front of them, which was also sent by email last week and over the weekend. Mr. Walker, is there something you'd like to lead in this evening? Okay. We'll start with Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, with your permission, I want to provide a brief overview of the basic tenets of the plan. The mayor has proposed purchase of 178 Old Colony Avenue to create a new special education learning center before turning it over to Dr. Cristofaro for a general outline of the programming of the proposed facility. In most basic terms, the proposal before you tonight provides an opportunity to do something incredibly important for many of our young people and their families, and at the same time, save money. As you all know, the Quincy Public Schools spends a substantial percentage of its budget placing students who need specialized educational services to schools outside of Quincy. This proposal aims to keep many of those students right here in Quincy by providing services that few individual school districts around the state currently provide. In addition to hearing from Dr. Cristofaro and his leadership team about the educational opportunities that the Learning Center will provide, we have several members of the mayor's team here tonight to answer any questions the body may have relative to three major components of the proposal. The first is you're all in a receipt of a memorandum from Solicitor Jim Timmons about the real estate transaction we are asking you to approve this evening. He's here to answer any questions you may have, but I'll note that the proposed purchase price is below the assessed value of the property and very likely lower than the market value. That is large part due to working in collaboration with a great community partner in Eastern Nazarene College. The opportunity only came to light within the last couple of months, and the mayor certainly wishes to extend his gratitude to the leadership team at ENC for working collaboratively with the city on this proposal. One of the few conditions the college had was to move swiftly, as they are under a time constraint on the closing of the property in the end of this calendar year. And that's why the proposal was submitted just several weeks ago. Commissioner of Public Buildings, Paul Hines, is also here tonight. A little more than $1.5 million of the proposed appropriation request is set aside for the capital improvements needed to transform this building into a special education learning center. What is included in the appropriation amounts to a first phase of work necessary, largely major building envelope issues, which could be identified almost immediately. Commissioner Hines, the superintendent's team, and architects are continuing to work on the full classroom build-out, and we anticipate being before the body with a subsequent capital request within the coming months, once the program is fully developed. Under any scenario, the capital costs associated with the project will be tens of millions of dollars less than what would have been necessary had we bought a vacant piece of property or bought a piece of property, torn down a building, and constructed a new school facility. Our chief financial analyst and economist, Eric Mason from Municipal Finance, is here as well. He provided you all with some background material related to one of the major benefits of this proposal, that not only does this provide great opportunity for a number of our young people, it makes financial sense. The projections you have are based on conservative estimates and will be fully fleshed out as the process moves forward. But both the school department and the mayor believe strongly that under any scenario, once we open the door to this facility, it will save the city money. With that, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. De Cristofaro.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Welcome, Dr. Cristofaro.
Chairman, thank you. Thank you very much, and good evening to everyone. I want to make sure I recognize staff with me, and Deputy Superintendent Kevin Mulvey is here, Director of Business Jim Mullaney, Director of Special Education and Elementary Education Aaron Perkins, and as well our ever-present Quincy School Committee Vice Chair Emily Lebo, and Committeeman Paul Regola. Thank them for their presence, as well as Cassandra Beck, who's the president of the Parent Advisory Council of Special Education, and she's with supportive parents as well. So I want to thank them for coming here this evening. So again, good evening to everyone, and I want to thank right away Mayor Koch for his definitely just unwavering support of all of our students in the Quincy Public Schools, but especially for this remarkably thoughtful piece of vision that he has for our special education students, and as importantly, you know, our families, so many of our special education families as well. So I want to thank the mayor at the outset. He did give me a call one day and say, can we come down to the 180 Old Colony Ave, and I kind of knew where Old Colony Ave, but wasn't really familiar with the building. We walked through the building with Commissioner Hines, and it was nothing short of absolutely incredibly impressive. And we talked about that, and then as things go on, he took other steps with school committee and with you to share all the goodness, I think, of what this building has to offer. So it seems really, though, when we come to the city council, we're always looking for, or asking for requests, whether it be for your support for new school funding, significant budgets, or by invitation by Brian Palmucci for promising practices. The requests, and as well as your thoughtful support, always is related to hope for students, for families, for a dedicated professional staff, in a city that continues to adhere to the concept of surround care. You know, that's ensuring that all children, adolescents, and young adults are cared for and educated while realizing and achieving the hope and dreams that every single parent holds deep in their hearts for their sons and their daughters. And I say that you have played an absolute outstanding role in everything that we have brought to you, and we're tremendously supportive. So thank you for that. Also wanted to thank your counselors that have served really on the school committee, but also on the special education subcommittee. Noel served for 2 years. That's really as long as you were with us, I believe. 2 years. Dave McCarthy, 10 years on the special education subcommittee. Ian Mahoney, member of the Special Education Subcommittee for 4 years, and you chaired the Special Education Subcommittee for 6 years. So for a total of 10 years, all of you were serving our parents, making sure we had the budget we needed for our special students and families. So I want to thank you for everything that you have done for special education in the city of Quincy. And as mentioned, you have the PowerPoint in front of you that you had it emailed to you, and so make sure that you'll be able to ask questions about that as we go on. So again, this evening we're here to share really an educational opportunity for students with special needs on the autism spectrum, as well as their families. And this notion has been talked about for quite a long period of time, saying we need space and we need budget. And I think that this Old Colony Ave will ensure, certainly, that all of our children that will attend will be spending less time on transportation and more quality time with our dedicated staff. This building will allow us, our school system, to enhance parent involvement with a very special, unique parent resource center. It will also allow us to limit site and programmatic transitions from one building to another for our children, because this building will be their school. Currently, we have 5 school sites that house our integrated pre-K and our CARES program. So this would, be a lot. Many of these students would come to the Learning Center, and that would need to be talked about in the timeline to come. This building also offers integration opportunities, as well as the ability to offer a setting that parents whose students have placements outside of our school system will want them to return to the Quincy Public Schools and our Learning Center. It also allows our school system the opportunity to collaborate with other school systems to tuition in their students with very special needs. This extraordinary building will offer and we like to think about this building as 4 walls with hope inside. Is dedicated with our dedicated staff, and parents offer many opportunities to plan together, to collaborate, share site professional development together. That's our professional staff, our paraprofessional staff, as well as many parent and family academies. In addition, the staff and parents will have the ability to closely communicate while collectively learning everything we can from each other about every student's unique educational plan. And as we all know, due to increasing costs of special and very unique education, to which this body has been very, very supportive, there will be a substantial savings within our out-of-district special education tuition budget, within our transportation, our tutoring, and our specialized equipment budget lines in year one. The model is built upon establishing a program of high, if not higher quality, than outside placements. Our goal is to have, at least in the first year, 30 to 40 students return to the Quincy Public Schools from outside placements at an average of about $120,000 per student for tuition and transportation. As well, to look to enroll any move-in students. We have an average of 10 move-in students yearly that come in with an autism diagnosis, that we can get them to this center rather than making sure that they enroll or having them enroll in outside placements with transportation. So I'm sure you have many questions, and we can address those. But first, I'd like to introduce the Director of Special Education, Erin Perkins, who has worked on this unique proposal for the use of this building that we hope to open in the summer of 2021. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I just wanted to start by thanking the City Council, the Mayor, and the School Committee for your continued support of special education in the City of Quincy. I'm extremely proud to work in a city that puts the needs of the students at the forefront. And I certainly could not do this job without the support of wonderful families that I work with on a daily basis. So I just would like to just thank them for being here tonight. I have Amy Vallely, Debbie Nabstead, Kerry Hurley, Kathy O'Brien, Dolores Finn, and hopefully future special education teacher and graduate of the Quincy Public Schools, Shannon O'Brien, is also here with us today. So I would just like to briefly go over the proposal for the Learning Center. This proposal is a truly wonderful opportunity for both our students and their families. So our current proposed design, which was in the PowerPoint that you received last week and over the weekend, is to focus on 4 learning neighborhoods. So the learning neighborhoods would include a learning neighborhood for pre-kindergarten, both CARES and integrated preschool. Kindergarten to grade 2 would be the second learning neighborhood. Grades 3 to 5, students in the CARES program would be the third learning neighborhood. And then our fourth learning neighborhood would be the grades 6 to 8 students in the CARES program. We think that having the learning neighborhoods is a really nice opportunity for us to address different needs depending on the age level of the students that are participating in those learning neighborhoods and attending those learning neighborhoods, and really tailor the space and the design to address the needs as the students get older and in the program. In addition, there would be student dining areas, and which would also serve as a motor room when the students are not, having their lunch or their breakfast. And we would have therapy rooms in each of the neighborhoods. So therapy for our students with autism is an extremely important part of the day in terms of speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. So to have a dedicated therapy space for each of these neighborhoods, I think is just an unbelievable opportunity, and just something that the students and the families will greatly benefit from. In addition, there'll be student support staff that will be available at the Learning Center. So, of course, there would be a principal and a team administrator. In addition, we'd have multiple guidance staff working within the Learning Center and located throughout the building, so that we can help support the teachers and the students as they move through the day. Psychologist would also be a part of the staff at the Learning Center. And then really important to the program is what's called Board Certified Behavioral Analysts. And so those are experts in the field of autism, and they help develop the individual children's programs and hopefully, design plans for their specific individual needs. In addition, we are proposing that we would have a music therapy room. That's an integral part of the CARES program for us right now, and to have a dedicated space for that therapy would be just wonderful. We'd also have a gym and a motor room, and this could serve as a space for when it's not a great day outside, for children to have a space where they can run and play and ride bikes and trikes and practice walking up and down stairs and, using maybe an adaptive basketball hoop. So really great opportunity, and again, a space that we can tailor for the adaptive needs of the students that we will be working with. In addition, one of the things we're really excited about is the possibility of having a sensory space and a calming area. So a dedicated sensory space. Many of the students that we work with become easily overstimulated and need a space to calm down and take a break. And so a space that could have lights and soft spaces for the children to sit and just kind of decompress so that they can go back to their day when they're ready. And then in addition, also just a calming room that is kind of minimalist, and that students can regroup when they need to, take some space and come back and hopefully successfully complete their day. In addition, we are also proposing that we have a life skills classroom, which would be on the 3rd floor. And that would be for our older students. And so this, I think, is an unbelievable opportunity to set up almost like a mock apartment and workshop where students can learn to, some self-help skills, learn how to care for themselves, learn how to use things like the microwave, the fridge, some stovetop activities, some cooking activities. In addition, working with some of our partners like Work Inc. to bring in some pre-vocational opportunities for these students so that we can start preparing them for the future in post-secondary education or career when they leave us. A nurses suite would also be very important, so we would more than likely have multiple nurses, and so to have a dedicated nurses office for our students, it would be great. And then in addition, I think a huge part of this is professional development. So we are also proposing that we have a space that is dedicated to professional development, because that would be extremely important to this program to have ongoing professional development throughout the year. Some examples of that professional development include things like the PECS training, which is a communication training, and it works with our staff to show them different techniques in order to help students learn to communicate at their level. And many of the students that we work with are nonverbal or minimally verbal. So to have opportunities for professional development that is specifically tailored to our students' needs is something that's really exciting. And that would also double as a resource library, so materials and things for students and parents and teachers would be available within the professional development space. We're also proposing that we have multiple conference rooms, so opportunities for us to meet with families and to potentially have multiple meetings going on at the same time. I think is crucial. And then also a space for Cassandra to have meetings with her families as the QPAC president, and many of the parents that we have here today, just opportunities for them to have a space to bring experts in or presenters or have their monthly meetings. It is something that we would really look forward to within this space. In addition to that, we are also proposing that we have a dedicated parent resource center within this space that would also, be Cassandra's office, so a place where parents could come during the day, after school, and they know that they can get the help and support they need in terms of connecting them to outside services or looking at services that, additional services that we could provide in district. I think that, having a space that is always available and full of resources for parents who would really benefit and would really like that assistance is really great. And then one of the things that we do all year long is we test students actually on an ongoing basis all year long for the pre-kindergarten. And oftentimes our parents have to travel between at least 2 sites, sometimes 3, in order for that testing to be complete or to have their meetings. So we are proposing that we have a dedicated testing space so families would only have to come to one space where they would have their testing completed, their screenings completed, all their meetings would happen there, because we'd have the multiple conference rooms. And so families could have just one location with one staff that they are working with. When you transition from early intervention into the public school system, it can be really intimidating. So to have that one welcoming team that those families get to know really, really well, and we in turn get to know those families really, really well, I think it will really help to streamline our process in that respect. We're also proposing that we have Beyond the Bell activities. So many of the students that we work with are not typically students who are able to participate in some of our after-school activities, because for various reasons, oftentimes it's that they need additional support or a higher level of need than what is typically found in the regular education setting. And so to have Beyond the Bell activities that are absolutely tailored to this particular group of students and is appropriate for this particular group of students, I think is really wonderful. And with that, we are working with some of our partners, some of the people that we are actually talking with and meeting with already. South Shore Autism has expressed an interest in partnering with us. And so one of the things that they do is to provide direct ABA or applied behavioral analysis services to students. And their center currently is located, I believe, in Needham. And so to have that opportunity in Quincy where families can come and go to Quincy to receive those services and not have to go all the way to Needham, I think it would be just such a great resource and a great resource for us as a district. In addition, we are also partnering in discussions with Melmark, and so they would be the people that would help us develop this programming. And they are an autism school in Massachusetts. They are currently an out-of-district autism school, and so they would help us develop our programs and our resources and train our staff so that we are ready to provide the best quality services that the students in Quincy can have and deserve. In addition, we're also, want to partner with Quincy After School and are talking with Sarah Morrison from Quincy After School about looking at creating more of a specialized after-school program for students, with autism, so that they could attend that after-school program, and that we could partner with them in terms of maybe providing paraprofessionals, training their staff, so that they were equipped to work with our students. And that it's a successful experience for both the families and the students. So in addition to the Beyond the Bell activities, the other, I think, exciting feature is the idea of an adaptive playground that would be designed to be handicap accessible and meet the various needs of our children, so that they would have a place to go out and play, in the mornings or afternoons, and it's equipment that they can access and they can use regardless of the student's disability. So, the idea of that, I think, is just an excellent, excellent opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you get the idea and the notion that this is very, very comprehensive. And I think it's going to take a lot of work, which means a lot of communication with a lot of people, including, of course, the City Council, the Quincy School Committee, to make sure that, and so many parents at QPAC that really want to know exactly what's going on and how we are helping every single individual child. So it's absolutely an exciting endeavor, and we look for your support. And any questions you may have at this time programmatically, we'd be happy to answer them.
First up, Nina Liang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. So I just want to start out, I do have some questions here, but I want to start off by saying, obviously, a huge thank you to all of you who are, really committed to this process. I think anything that we do here in the city for the betterment of our families and most importantly for our kids is always going to be a positive thing. So, with that obviously comes the how, right? How are we going to make sure that this is possible and how are we going to implement this? And I think that's what we're here to discuss tonight, but I think it's important before we get into that to just, of course, say thank you at the onset for everything that you guys do. So I wanted to start off by saying that. I went through the slides that we had received that detailed some of the programming, and Erin, I know that you had just gone through them as well. I'm really excited for the range of programming that you guys are going to have, particularly having it parsed out by grade level, because I think it's important to understand that not everyone with the same problems will have those problems, depending on what age they're at. And, personally for me, my younger sister had gone through the system when she was very, very young, and she was misdiagnosed with having Down syndrome. And since then, I had gone onto other programs because they realized she had more severe disabilities. But while she was there at the schools, it was great because at the age bracket that she was at, it was helpful, to have the programs that she had. So that being said, I am really excited to have the programs laid out in front of us the way that they are, to have them parsed out by age group and by grade. But I'm also wondering if you could just dive in a little bit deeper and explain how you came to create this structure. Again, I know it's important, and I do appreciate parsing them out by grade level, but how did you guys collectively come to the decision that you're going to have these particular programs?
Well, again, I think, again, with school committee staff before this, members before this, we had talked about it much more informally that we wished that we had. In fact, we had a program, I think about 2005, 2006, we talked about a program at that point for after-school activities that we were going to plan on, that we actually with Tufts University, and it just didn't pan out for a lot of reasons, but we had talked about something like this. It was really more a landmark type of program. So we've been talking about this for a very long period of time. So when space became available, or certainly may become available, the first thing we thought of was autistic population and how to bring them all together, so they can collaborate, again, whether it's staff, whether it's parents, whether, for kids with kids. It's really to create a great culture for these kids. So it really was immediate. It wasn't, we didn't have to think a lot about it. It was something that had been on the plate for a long period of time, and if there's space and it's helpful with budget, then the two will work great for kids and parents.
So this program that's laid out in front of us is like your Christmas wish, or Christmas list of, if we can have the ideal programming for students who have the need in this area, this is everything that you guys would want, correct?
This is it, and we need to do it right, and we need your support. But I think that's where the communication comes in with a lot of our partners as well, and QPAC and parents listening, and then when we're done, listen some more, and have something and create something that's absolutely ideal for our kids.
Okay. The next question I have then with it is the cost structure for all this. So I don't know if Eric, is Eric? Eric, hi. I don't know if you'd be more qualified to answer these questions, but obviously, again, with this amazing wish list of programming that I think is really important and obviously is going to be well served to our community here, it comes at a cost, obviously. So I just wanted to know if you could give sort of an overall cost breakdown for staffing for all of these programs for during the day as well as after school for the after school programs that you had mentioned, which is amazing. I wish we had had those before. But with that also comes the materials and any technology that comes with it as well. So if you could just, again, give us an overview of what we're looking at for staffing, for during and after school, as well as the materials and any technology related to what we need.
I can speak more clearly on what's factored in the model and the cost estimates for technology and supplies. I defer to the school members to talk about staffing requirements. There is an indicator that's held in there for, I worked with the superintendent's office to come up with kind of a base level with an additional placeholder for the staff that would be needed for the building in terms of teachers, paras, custodial staff, clerical staff, and so forth. So that in the charts you have in front of you that talk about the savings, that's what's included. It also includes operational costs, including heating the building. There's actually a really interesting institute called IOTA that calculates out the square footage energy consumption costs for these buildings. I'm basing that not off it having solar on the roof, so if we go solar on the roof, that will, of course, reduce annual costs. So as of now, as we look in the long term, the savings, the first year, if we go with this phase one build out and some subsequent appropriations, it will come out to about a $350,000 in year one savings, and that continues to climb over time.
Sorry, so you said $350,000 savings in the first year. That's with the, all of the anticipated technology, materials, staffing, utilities. So with all of that in operation, we're still going to see a $350,000 savings in the first year?
Yes, and that's conservative.
Okay. And then from there, do you see any changes, or do
Well,
you
yeah,
see that?
it will continue to climb, and the biggest driver of the increased savings is because it's our capital and we control it, we can control expense better. If you look at it's called the PPI, it's like the CPI for producers. The cost of education, in particular special needs education, is climbing at a rate of about 6% a year, where the cost of capital management, conservatively about 2%, 1.5%, and then operational costs, we have modeled out at 2%. So we're already ahead of the curve by almost 50% of the growth rate. And that stacks over time. So over 30 years, a 3% growth rate can double your savings pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question too, then back to the programming and services that are going to be provided. I think either Dr. Christopher or Aaron, you can answer this question. I know with this programming, there's also an additional cost for managing IEPs and ISPs, and this timing is really, well, like, as or good. I just came off of an ISP for my sister, and I know how many people it takes to sit in that room and put a good ISP program together, and, translation services is a huge piece of it for me personally, to make sure that we have that as well. So, are there going to be translation services provided for these IEP and ISP programs for the parents and the teachers?
Absolutely, as we do now, with that'll continue, yes.
Okay.
So we've talked about that, actually, Counselor. You and I have talked about that.
We have, yes, because, we had, I think it was at the time, and I don't mean to digress, but this is another opportunity to say thank you. Ophelia was in the public school systems, and you guys sent her over to us, even though we were, again, out of the city for the services that we needed. So I'm, wanting to stay on top of that because it is a priority, so I appreciate that you guys are including that in your ISPs and IEPs. And the last thing I want to ask you is just about transportation costs. So I know we're going to see a reduction, and Eric, you gave us sort of the overall picture that we are going to have a savings, but we obviously then will incur some savings when it comes to transportation across the city. Are you guys looking to work with DDS or any other state-funded organizations or programs to help offset the transportation costs?
We could. We don't do that at this point. We could look at any grant funding or whatever, but a lot of the transportation really depends on who, are our students and how we create this timeline of dealing with parents, talking with parents about their IEPs, and hopefully, getting these students to come back from outside placements, which is really the main source of transportation funding. So that's just it's going to take some time, but there would be substantial savings in transportation.
Yeah, that is something I would just ask that you guys stay on top of, is also working with the parents when you're doing the IEPs and ISPs to see what options they have through the DDS program, because even if they, are coming, to the city and they live within the city, they still have to transport. And depending on the student's needs, they might need one-on-one, or they might need one in a monitor, and that, can really escalate the costs over time. And so I can see the more students we're serving, the more we have to sort of keep an eye on our growing transportation costs, again, depending on what the special needs are for that student. So I would just, again, remind you and implore you to make sure to stay on top of that as well for options to see, what other programs are out there that can help to offset our costs, because I can see that growing over time as well. Okay, thank you. Paul, is Paul here? Hi, Paul.
Hello, Councilor.
So I went over the, I don't know, what is this document called? The report for the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing safety report for all of the different utilities in the building. And there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done in the plumbing, the HVAC, electrical, and the building and site fire and life safety. The majority of the items in there all say they have about 4 years left to it. So if we're looking at a 2021 open, at that point, they'll need to get redone in 2 to 3 years' time. So could you just go over what your timeline is going to be for the repairs for the plumbing, the HVAC, the electrical, the building and site fire and life safety, as well as the cost? Because I know the appropriation in front of us tonight is for 8.5. 6.8, I imagine, is for the building, and then, as the math has it, 1.7 is left for any capital improvements. Is that going to be enough to cover all of these?
Good evening, committee members.
You're going to say yes, right? And then we'll be done?
Well, yeah, I just want to, it's kind of pre-gaming from my presentation, but yes, tonight's appropriation of the 8.5 million has about 1.7 for immediate needs to the building. And it is planned that those items that are called out in the engineer's report prepared by EBI, that we would be addressing them in this initial renovation of the building. One of the unique things about this school environment over our others is this is going to be a 12-month-a-year school. We can't shut it down in the summer and pull it apart like we do to some of our other buildings. So that coupled with the fact that the population of the people using the building are easily distracted and upset by change and confusion. So we don't want to be in there during the days and during the programming either. So we really want to do as much as we can before the doors open. So each of the items on both the frequently asked question that you had circulated, as well as the other matters that are in the report, we do plan on addressing.
Sorry, wait, just as a note, the fact you're referring to, is that the list of repairs that I had sent over to
I'm
ask
sorry?
about? The fact that you're referring to the FAQ, are you referring to the list of repairs that I had sent over to inquire about?
Yes, you've highlighted some that were in the engineer's report.
Yeah, so the plumbing, the water closets, the urinals, the bathrooms, hot water, sanitary lines, that's what you're referring to, right?
The short answer is we're
Okay.
doing all of them, yes, those are the items. I will say that, and I hope there's no engineers in the room, but sometimes engineers overthink things. Like when they speak to the water closets, there's nothing wrong with the ceramic toilets. They're probably better quality than you would buy today. We wouldn't go in and change the toilets, but yes, we would be changing the flushometers and the mechanical components of it. Same thing with the sinks. This program is for the student population, a lot of the autism, but there are multiple diagnoses as well with the population. So we're going to make sure everything's completely compliant to the ADA requirements and then go some if we need to. So our plan is to change the faucet handles, so they're not you have to twist your hands, the levers and things like that. So the short of it is, upfront, all of that on that list, and then some. There's another firm that's doing the building exterior envelope survey, which the building, for its age and when it's renovated, looks really remarkably well on the exterior. But at this point, it seems one of the roofs should be replaced. It probably has a few years of life left, but for the same reasons, we want to change it now, get in there, get out, and that allows us to expand the solar array that's on the roof. There's a structural review being done of the roof structure to make sure it can take the weight of the solar,
Great.
but also the roof membrane as well.
That was actually one of the questions on there as well, is to see if we can install solar panels if we're going to be doing the extensive work we're doing on the building. So again, just referring to the list that I had sent over to you with the bulk of these items having only 4 years lifespan left to them, you said that's all going to be done before the building is open. Now, how much of this work is going to be covered under the remaining $1.7 million of this appropriation, and how much do you anticipate you'll have to come back to us for to, again, complete this work by 2021?
Okay. Of the approximately 1.7, we're covering our engineering fees and our architectural fees for this initial phase. We're also, the building right now has one building elevator serving the 3 stories. We anticipate with the population in the building that there would be wait times and a crunch. And if there's an urgent evacuation of the building, one elevator is likely not sufficient. So we want to add a second elevator. And we're anticipating that's going to cost about $450,000 to $500,000 between design, procurement, and construction, and testing and operation. So of this HVAC piece and the other items that you've spoken to, we anticipate that of being about $506,000. We've had them costed out. The elevator, again, another $450,000 to $500,000. There would obviously be costs associated with the replacement of that roof, which I was referring to. The solar system should not cost us money. Generally, the vendors upfront the cost of them when we enter a power purchase agreement from them. And I mentioned the architectural services. So that's how we eat up the funds that we have now. As to what the whole build-out would be, at this point, we've had a number of working sessions and listening sessions with the staff and the school department about what their wishes are and what they would like to see for a state-of-the-art facility. It's expensive, but it's necessary. For instance, we're going to be constructing a bathroom in every single classroom so that those that have the urgent need or behavioral issues can be tended to by the teaching staff while the class is still present, rather than going to a gang bathroom down the hall and either sending the child who may not be able to go on their own, travel on their own, or leave a class unattended. And it just helps also with the training and the teaching of the students to care for themselves, to be able to attend to that. So that's going to be costly, but we feel it's necessary. The HVAC system for by and large is good. It does need upgrades, but when we build out the building that, if you're looking from Old Colony Avenue, the left-hand building, it's kind of an open floor plan at present, so we're going to be partitioning that off into classroom and office and motor skill spaces and such. So we do need to modify ductwork to allow for that, to have the rooms properly ventilated and the tempered air introduced. And, you know, we need to be able to address that. So all of these things, the changing out of the carpeting to vinyl tile rather than carpeting, given the experience the programs have had with accidents and such. So we anticipate, you know, a substantial remodel on the inside. What that dollar figure is, I don't know at this point. Our engineers are working on that. We're finally just now, with the number of meetings, come to an agreement on what the physical plan is going to be, and that's with the cost estimators as we speak. I'm told we can anticipate $4 to $5 million.
For total improvements?
Pardon?
For total improvements, $4 to $5 million?
Yes.
And do you, I don't know if this is a question to you or to Dr. Christopher, or both of you, do you guys have a timeline? I know you have a timeline for when you want to open, but what's the timeline for what these next steps are going to be? Again, you have the wish list here in front of you of, you know, what the ideal program is going to be in this building, and you have, you know, I think from that point, an idea of what the construction is going to look like and the cost, but, you know, in between then, you'd have to get an estimate and bring that back in front of us, I imagine. So do you know when we would anticipate that, or what your schedule looks like between, again, both you and Dr. DeCristofaro?
I apologize. I have trouble hearing. I believe the question is, what's my timeline of getting this done? The construction done, was that it?
Well, no, I mean, what's the anticipated timeline for, okay, this is the final plan, okay, this is definitely what we're going with in the building, great, Paul, how long is this going to take? And, you know, what is that anticipated timeline looking like?
Pardon? We have settled on the plan?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the timeline, at this point, we have an end timeline, and we have a beginning timeline. In the middle of that is going to be something we really have to develop, because not only if we have a draft schematic design, now we have to look inside and say, okay, what do the classrooms look like? We know the square footage, which is between 700 and 745 square feet, which is fine. We know that our children, there'll be no more than 8 children in some. The integrated pre-K, there'll be 15 students in. That's an integrated with 7 special education and 8 regular education in the class. So we know we're getting to the point now that we need to have our staff, our parents talk about what the inside of that building will look like in order to then speak with Paul and say, you know, this is what we agreed upon, and this is what we're going to go forward with. And then we can create a timeline on those individual tasks that mean so much. But it's going to take a bit of time to do that. We have really about 70 frequently asked questions that we've asked, including yours, by the way, in that we need to really take a look at and get back and break them up into categories and say, okay, these are the tasks that we need to do. But it's going to be a pretty comprehensive and extensive timeline that we need to work on ASAP, you know, following this meeting.
Okay, that's great. I mean, it sounds like this budget, as well as the presentation for what you'd like to see, is kind of a living document, and I think from what it sounds like, you know, there's going to be adjustments that are going to be made to them. You know, I will say that, again, I'm really grateful that we are actually moving in this direction. It would have been wonderful if for the last 26 years, you know, my sister didn't have to go out to Braintree and subsequently now Weymouth to get the services that she needs. It would have been great to have her somewhere local, you know, while she was being misdiagnosed for the first 10 years of her life. And so, you know, I do apologize for making it personal, but it is. You know, I'm just one family of about 100,000 people in the city who need this kind of service, and I know from going through it how specialized every student and their care is really needed, you know, and so I'm glad to see that we're moving in the direction to try to serve people here where they live. I am anticipating, you know, what the final markup is going to look like and what the final program is going to look like. I'm excited to see what it is. I'm also anxious, obviously, for what the price tag is going to be with that as well. So I would just ask that you guys consider some of the things that we had talked about tonight to help with some of the cost savings. And yeah, I look forward to seeing the final proposal after the school department and Paul, you guys work together to give us a final proposal. But thank you truly for this work. again, if it was 26 years sooner, I'd be grateful, but I still am grateful that you guys are doing it now, so.
Thank you, Counselor. And then anyone, anytime that wants to walk through the building, I'd be glad to take you through the building to show you some of our ideas and take your ideas as well into this. Thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Could I just touch a base on the timeline again, now that I've heard it, and I apologize. I make him sound a good listener. Dr. DeCristofaro detailed the building interiors and the finishes and the other work. To expedite this process, we're doing it on dual courses. We're doing the mechanicals and the MEP products and all that at the same time they're working theirs to expedite it. And I have to say, Westling Architects, who got under contract in my department, has been amazing in the turnaround of the work product. If we have a meeting that ends at 9:30, we have the updated plans at 12. They've been fantastic. And at this point, we had a great success with the Southwest Middle School doing the procurement on a Chapter 149 alternative delivery method, the construction manager of risk. We anticipate using that same procurement process for this project. It gets the construction team in early with the design team, and they planned and developed the program and the sequencing and phasing of construction together so that there is not roadblocks and obstacles put in the way. And you can get your long lead times like the elevator cars and things like that. You can get the order in very early on rather than placing the order at the very end when the bids go out. So there's a qualified selection process that happens early. And myself, members of my staff, and Catherine Hoban, we all went to a seminar presented by the state last week on that very topic. So we're going to convene and get going on that process like this week.
Councilor DeBona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation, the entire group up here today, the team. I attended the parent forum on the proposed learning center with Citywide PTO and QPAC over on Wednesday, November 6th. It was very informative where the parents had a chance to ask all of you questions. I thought it was, you guys did a great presentation. Paul Hines, you did a great analysis on the building. You know, just looking back on the last 6 years that I've been out here running for elected offices and stuff, I have spoken to many parents on many porches about the SPED program and what we could bring to the table, and here we are in fruition 6 years later proposing this in front of the City Council. Very graphic, I guess I could say, discussions on these porches. With parents. Some parents have left the city, some parents are still here. Just about, you know, the decision on their children and then the SPED program and what we had to offer and being sent out of district. This gives us an opportunity to do stuff in-house. A lot of the younger children that you talked about, starting with that. This opens a door for more partnerships as well with other agencies. Talking about South Shore Autism in Norwell, where we could have the resources in-house here in Quincy, and a center base that parents know that you could go to 178 Old Colony to get these resources and someone to talk to, you know, about these things, and that's important to the city. I know the cost savings is between $300,000 and $500,000 a year, which would be great, but it's the right thing to do, in my personal viewpoint of it. On the timeline a little bit, Director Hines did a great presentation at the parent forum. You had said a magic ball was if we could go September 2020, and if it doesn't work, is January 2021. Now, you had spoken about how important it was to do this right the first time, because it's a 12-month, 24/7 type of facility where we don't really have much downtime to go into. Like in the schools, when we do the schools over, you can go in the summertime when there's no kids there. But you're going to have consistent year-round children inside the school. So I would think to the best interest that we do it right the very first time around. And you spoke about it, Director Hines, at the parent forum, which was huge. Just a little bit about the amount of children. You had spoke a little bit, is it going to be around 200 children total? and then about 30 to 50 children that are being placed out that are going to have the option of using the facility, or?
Yeah, that's about right. What we have to do is we have to take a look at the needs of all of our children, and then look at how many children coming from, that we will ask parents to please come back to the Learning Center. So there could be that 30 to 40 of those students. Right now, we have just under 200 students within the school system internally. So what we have to do, Noel, is to take a look at each and every program to see, as we build our program design, to see which students, which programs we want to have come into the Learning Center, and which programs will stay at the 5 sites that we have currently right now. So that's, again, not a great answer in the sense of cement, but I think it's just going to come with time. And also, as we go forward, talking with and meeting with parents, and, obviously see what they think about coming back, and we need to get started on it in a sense of showing something, showing, the classrooms, showing that this is what, the high quality that we will have in there. So that's why the number of students, may vary. 200 in the school system right now. How many of those students will come back, that we have to really look at that. And then you also have move-in students that come from other cities and towns that have the autism diagnosis, that we have to look at them as well. So it's going to vary, but there'll be enough space within this building to house that 200 plus quite easily. And we're looking at that just under 300 in a sense, because you have the integrated pre-kindergarten program that's a half day. So you have the half day, so there'll be probably about 130 of those students in the morning and 130 in the afternoon. So we're looking at just about, maybe a little bit under 300 students, but certainly there's capacity within the schematic design that we have now to house that many students very comfortably. And that's really what we're looking for.
Now, I know a couple of the parents had asked about being, allowing their student or their child to continue to be placed outward, which is, continue to do that. Are they going to be able to have the option of being grandfathered in, that they continue to do placement out?
Yeah, there's really no reason that we would compel a family to bring their student back if they're very comfortable with where they are, whether it's the Collaborative or the League School or Higashi or South Shore Collaborative. If they're there and they're comfortable, what we have to do is convince them to come back. This is what we have to offer. So there is no, we're not going to say to parents, you have to come back, you will come back. That's really not how it works.
Sure, yeah, and a lot,
Comfort of the parent, comfort of the child and the family that comes first.
that's great. It's communication amongst the parents that are being out of district, that are going out and getting the services, and maybe they want to continue that, but giving the option that we're going to have future to allow the children to stay here in-house. Some of the students don't like to be transported, and takes, hour and a half of transportation, and it would really help them, but some students don't mind it, some parents don't mind it, but, for me, I'm 100% on board, and I'd like to make a motion to approve the $8.5 million acquisition of 178 Old Colony. I make that in the form of a motion.
Okay, great, thank you. There's a couple things. We've got a couple of people who want to speak. Council is due to start at 7:30, so we'll keep that motion on the table. We'll recess this meeting briefly, and we'll go into the regular council session and come back to continue this discussion. Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, November 18th, 2019 City Council meeting. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Kane.
Present.
Counselor DeBona. Present. Counselor Harris. Present. Counselor Hughes. Counselor Liang. Present. Counselor Mahoney. Present. Counselor McCarthy. Counselor Palmucci. Present. President Kroll. Present. 7 members, you have a quorum.
Would everyone please stand with me for a moment of silence? Let's say a moment of silence for those who you deem worthy of that moment. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, will you please read the open meeting law?
Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible.
First item on the agenda.
The first item is honoring of Christine Cugini for the Quincy Wreaths Across America, and Brad Cole.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman.
Acting.
Acting, Mr. President. It is with great enthusiasm that I share here this evening with the City Council, the honoring of Christine Cugini, who many I know are familiar with. Christine is a resident of Quincy, a United States Navy veteran, and she is also the local face of the local chapter of the Wreaths Across America, which many of us are aware of is in its second season here in Quincy. Christine worked tirelessly last year, really through a grassroots fundraising organization. And, essentially the crux of the program is to make sure, and I'll let her explain further, that each grave of each veteran in Mount Wollaston Cemetery has a wreath placed on the gravestone throughout the holiday season. I know that there's quite a fundraising effort underway regarding this particular initiative, and it's a wonderful program. So I want to take a moment, honor the service of Christine, present her with a commendation from the Quincy City Council, which reads as follows. Presented to Christine Cugini, Quincy Wreaths Across America, in recognition and appreciation of the Wreaths Across America program at Mount Wollaston Cemetery. Laying of wreaths at all veterans' graves during the holiday season brings the community together to remember all those who have served and sacrificed for this great nation. As the program enters its second year, we wish you continued success on your mission to remember the fallen, honor those who have served, and teach our children the value of freedom. Folks, if you would please join me in welcoming Christine Cugini.
Thank you all so much for having me here tonight. It's a true honor and a very special moment for me standing here in front of you. Receiving this award and the work that I've done and will continue to do to remember and honor our veterans is something that's very close to my heart. In 2017, I went to Arlington National Cemetery and participated in my first Wreaths Across America Day. It was a day that changed my life, and immediately I came back to the hotel that night after the day of laying wreaths on our veterans' graves, and I researched how to bring this to Quincy. And as you know, 2018 was our first year. A thing that kept with me, a quote that was said throughout that whole weekend, and I'd like to share it with you, and hopefully you'll take it with you and maybe understand how important just a little bit more laying these wreaths are. Remember this, in truth, a person dies twice, once when he stops breathing, and the second time when somebody mentions his or her name for the last time. We say their names of our fallen out loud to make sure they'll never be forgotten. Thank you so much for this award. Thank you for listening to me and for all the help that the council and the residents of Quincy have given to Wreaths Across America, and we're going to continue to do this and get better each year. Thank you so much. Wreaths Across America Day is on December 14th. And of course, we need all the volunteers. We have 7,300 graves to place wreaths on this year. That's all 7 cemeteries in the city of Quincy. And so if you're available, please join us on that day. And there'll be a short ceremony speaking program that begins at 11:15 at Mount Wollaston Cemetery. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we're going to take a quick recess, take a photo, and then we'll be back up.
Okay, first item on the agenda, please, Madam Clerk.
2019-180, land order of taking.
Motion made by Counsel Kane and waive the motion, waive the reading on the motion, Counselor.
Do referral to Finance and Ordinance.
Motion made by Counsel Kane, second by Counsel DeBona to move to Finance Public Buildings. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item on the agenda, please, Madam Clerk.
Number 2,
Motion to waive the reading.
2019-181.
On the motion,
Do
Counselor.
referral, Finance and Ordinance, please.
Motion made by Counsel Kane, second by Counsel Palmucci to move to Ordinance and Finance. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item, please, Madam Clerk.
Number 3,
Motion to waive the reading.
2019.
On the motion.
Move to Ordinance and Finance, please.
Motion made to move to Ordinance and Finance, second by Counsel Palmucci. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item on the agenda, please.
4,
Motion to waive the reading.
On the motion.
Move to Ordinance and Finance, please.
Motion made by Counsel Kane to move to Ordinance and Finance, second by Counsel Palmucci. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, at this point, we will recess the current city council meeting, go back into finance, and then we'll be back.
Okay, we're back in Finance. We left off, Counselor DeBona has made a motion to approve. On the motion, we do have some folks who still want to speak. Counselor Mahoney, we'll start with you.
All right, so I'm going to start with, I'd start with you, Rick, but I'm going to go with Paul Hines. I feel like this is a game show, so Paul, can I ask a couple of questions about the building first?
And I'll caution you, I make him good.
What's that?
I would caution you, I make him good at my hearing.
Okay, well, I'll speak louder. Can you hear me?
Thank you,
Okay.
yes.
So for the building, so currently the building is set up for adults, correct? For adult learning?
Correct.
Okay, and part of it is classroom and part of it is office space, is that true?
If you were to look at it from Old Colony Avenue, the building on the right is built out for administrative offices for the school and classrooms. The building on the left, there's 3 stories, and they're, for the most part, an open plate with some petitioning that are used. The Innovation Center and some other tenants have been in there, but it's primarily office, but mostly open floor plan.
And is the plan to use the whole building for educational purposes for classroom?
Yep.
So there's going to be no administration in that building?
Not true. Not school committee or school department administration, but that particular school's administration will be in it.
So what's the square footage of the classroom that we're going to be building out? To get about, and then what's the square footage of the administration or office space that you're building out?
Off the top of my head, I don't have that. I apologize. There is floor plans in the packet that was given out Friday, but they don't have the dimensions on it because the architects were still working on that. So,
What's the square footage of the building, the total square footage of the building?
again, I
You
don't
know.
have that off the top of my head.
Okay, maybe you can provide that to me afterwards.
Yep.
So one of the things is the deed, so when we're looking at the deed is just for the building. So there's a campus kinderhouse building, that is not part of the taking.
That is
it's
not
just-
part of it.
Okay. So when you go into the space, the actual building itself has a shared driveway into the parking lot in the back, correct? What happens if the campus kinderhouse, if Eastern Nazarene sells the campus kinderhouse building for the shared parking space? And how many spaces does if the city of Quincy was to purchase that building, how does that work with the easement of the parking lot and then the shared parking space?
I would have to leave the final property lines that were determined through the solicitor's office. I do know that of the current configuration, that it's in common ownership, of course. So the campus kinderhouse drives across this parcel's back parking lot to do their drop-off loop. One of the things we were talking about in last week's meeting was what would be the traffic patterns, and we have the civil engineers working
Sorry,
on that.
repeat that, I missed what you said.
Last week's team meeting,
Yep.
we meet weekly on Thursdays, one of the conversations was with regard to what would be the traffic patterns.
Yep.
Where would be buses being dropped off, where would the parents drop off, what would be the flow, the circulation.
Okay.
So we've referred that to the civil engineers. But as far as the property line division, where they've finally fallen in the conveyance, I'd have to leave that to Jim.
Okay, that's an important issue.
Correct.
Because if we're going to purchase it, we currently have shared space in the back, and at the moment, the building is owned by ENC, and they're sharing it with themselves, so no big deal. But when you're purchasing something and you have a shared parking lot like that, what we need to know is how many spaces there are, and then how many spaces we anticipate the academic facilitators who will be working in the building, how many spaces we consider the need for a K-8 program.
Correct.
And then also,
If
again.
I may, the
Yep.
parking lot across the street from 180 Old Colony.
Is also on
that- Along the tracks, that is part of the acquisition.
So that's part of the acquisition. So do we have a total number of spaces?
Because again, I don't know how they divided the back, so I can't
Okay,
answer
so,
that.
but tonight is the night that you're asking us to purchase, to put the approval through for a purchase, correct? Is that, there's a motion on the floor by somebody?
That
so-
is the motion that's before, but the parking configuration.
That's part of- but that's
is
part of
not-
the-
Is not the most critical.
It may not be the most critical, Paul, but it is part of the package that we're reviewing tonight and being asked to purchase. And it is critical because we're putting a program in a building, and we need to know how many parking spaces that go along with that. So
And that's been
what you
referred to
may
as-
think, what you may think is not critical is critical in the long term of building out a program that's going to be successful. It might not be the highest level of critical, but it's part of what we're being asked to do. So that's something that's important. And then also in the building itself. So I know that Nina went over a lot of the questions that, with the build-out. So one of the things that you said is that you're going to be retrofitting the current bathrooms that are in the building, is that what you're saying? But then you're going to be doing additional room
Correct.
inside each room. So how many bathrooms that are you talking about in that 1.7 that we're going to be, how many, is there a bathroom on every floor, is there?
No, currently, there is a gang bathroom for both male and female on each of the 3 levels.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that would be modified with the new handles and faucets and flushometers. That would be within the 1.7 ballpark that's available for this appropriation. Each classroom, as shown on the floor plan, every single classroom has an individual use bathroom proposed,
So just single bathroom in
a
the.
single bath with
So in
sink.
the bathrooms that you're going to update, are they going to be modified on each floor for age appropriateness? Or, if it's K-2, is it going to be built out for, because you were saying originally that, an engineer might come in and say that they have to do something there, but the bathrooms, the water closets are actually in good shape. But are they in good shape for an adult, or are they in good shape for a 5-year-old or a 3-year-old?
It's anticipated that the gang bathrooms would be the adult bathrooms,
Okay.
both staff and visitors, and the student bathrooms would be the ones that are built in each classroom.
So
And
we're
they
gonna
would, the fixtures would be appropriately mounted per the plumbing code for the age of the student population in that space.
Okay, so, but you're going to only have one single bathroom in a classroom of 15? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So no boys or girls room, just a single bathroom?
Single-use occupancy, yep.
Okay, so if there's an emergency, you go to a different classroom. If there's somebody that there's 2
They
people
could
in
either
each
go to the
bathroom.
adjacent one or to the gang ones.
And
And
but
generally,
those ones
they
are going to be built
attended.
out for adults, not for young learners.
They're the standard commercial bathrooms. If in the pre-K level, there is a lower requirement for the bowl, but not from kindergarten and above.
Okay, just checking.
And the urinals are staggered in height in the men's rooms.
All right. And then the deed had, I think when I was looking at it, is it separated by those 2 buildings as well? I might be being confused. It had several different the lines were drawn for the deed. I don't have the paperwork. I wrote that at my office. I was taking notes at my office.
Again, I'd have to leave matters to the final conveyance parcels to Jim Timmons.
Does Jim know, or is it something?
Jim? As far as the parcels that are ultimately part of your agreement? The parcels, the conveyance parcels for the 180 Old Colony? What parcels, how are they configured for the conveyance, the proposed conveyance?
Well,
The
just-
parking in the back.
Sure. Are you asking about the back parking lot alone, or? 'cause
No, I'm
You seem
asking-
familiar with the 2 buildings, correct?
So what I was asking was, when I'm looking at the deed, there were several, I'm trying to ask for clarification of what we're purchasing and what we're getting.
Can you hold on one sec?
Sure.
I'm going to use the hearing device, and then I'll understand what you're asking.
Well, Paul says it's not important, so.
Okay, try again, please.
Okay, so for the building that we have before us, that we're purchasing, that we're asking the council to consider purchasing for this special education learning facility,
All right,
owned by Eastern Nazarene currently. In the deed, I want to know, the building is 180 Old Colony, but there's also in the deed, when you're looking at it, the parcels, what do we get for the purchase price? Are we getting the parking lot across the street, is what Paul had said? I just want clear, definitive answer as to what we're purchasing, other than the building, also the parking.
okay.
Okay.
We're getting the building with the parking lot behind it, and then we're getting the parking lot across the street.
Okay.
And Paul couldn't answer the question, but the parking lot across the street has approximately 60 spaces.
You could hear me back there,
And
but
then
you
there
can't
are-
hear me in front, okay? Just-
Pardon me?
You could hear me back there, but you couldn't hear me up front. Okay, I just wanted to clarify. I asked Paul that question, you couldn't hear me.
Yeah, well, I was using this behind you.
Okay, so,
Just so you're aware, I've suggested this to you before, but if something this important is on your mind, it would be very helpful, and it's actually consistent with the council rules, that you get us the questions ahead of the meeting. Because Paul knows nothing about the deed, the easements, and I've handled all that. That's easy. And we could add something in writing to you if I had known this was an issue.
well,
But
I also have a
the-
day job, so I was doing this today, and I didn't have enough time to be able to call you today, and I apologize, but sometimes you get a lot of stuff to review, and it's not always convenient. But as you know, Jim, I have called you before, so I apologize for not getting getting to you before the meeting, but the questions are still there.
No, understood. I'm just saying we're happy to answer them, but more equipped to if we know what they are coming into the meeting. And this one's pretty easy. Actually, I'll put this down now and I'll talk. The driveway is a common driveway, as you said. Eastern Nazarene, as the owner of the property, is going to retain, they want to retain the fee interest in that. So they want to retain ownership of the driveway going in, but they're going to grant a permanent access easement. And that's a fairly typical scenario in cases such as this, where you have commercial uses that go into an open parking lot. Paul talked about the fact that Campers Kinderhouse has a drop-off. They're going to put a little roundabout in there for that. And then we have plans in the back, I know, that have been discussed, but nowhere near finalized, to have possibly a recreational area in the back, and then some parking. But there's more than adequate parking across the street. And then there'll be additional available spaces to the rear.
How many spaces are across the street?
Pardon me?
How many spaces are across the street?
I don't know exactly. I know that along the rear lot line, there's roughly 35. The issue's going to be when we go in and restripe it. But we're projecting somewhere north of 50. And there's very good access and egress into that parking area. It's actually a double lot.
And then, I can't remember, is there parking on the street as well?
Yes, there is.
Is it hour parking, or is it all-day parking, or?
Well, we could regulate that and probably would. I'm not quite sure how we do it. That might be up to the, well, that would be up to the school department once they take over the building, I would say. I think that's something we should leave until the school department takes over the building, to let them, the school committee and school officials, determine what they think is most advantageous for that purpose.
Okay. I'm going to move on to now the superintendent, to ask a few questions to the superintendent.
Use this or no?
Probably could.
It works great.
Thanks, yes.
My father wears it as a necklace, Jim. Yeah. All right, so so when we're talking about a K-8 program in this building, let's first start with the program. What do we model this program after? Are we modeling it after anything particular, or is it the Quincy Public Schools model? What's the program modeled after?
Well, it's Quincy Public Schools model, but we've looked at, like,
But as we all know, can you talk?
Oh, I'm so sorry. South Shore Collaborative, we really have taken a real solid look at that. I've been part of that program for probably the past 12 or 15 years. They put an addition on, they have some great services, Their spacing is something that we're very, very comfortable with within programs. So, I mean, the good thing about this building is that the programs will be by floor, you know, and not necessarily at the collaborative. They're pretty much all together, but they've done a nice job in spacing. So we're looking at that. We visited a couple of times and talked with the director there and the executive director, to just giving us a tour and to take a look at how they view what the special education
So
program
is it
should
just
be.
the South Shore Collaborative that you're, that's the, is that the model, that's the one you're modeling at? That there's no other, you're not combining any other
But I
maybe
think,
programs that we have utilized to the?
I think in this, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're asking. I think that, you know, again, with Cassandra, she's been to several of these collaborative types of situations, whether it's League or Higashi, that we can also use as a model. I mean, right now, it's schematic design. That's really what it is. But we need to find out how other people, you know, really work operationally, as well as what their classrooms look like and the services that we may need. So
And South Shore Collaborative is a substantially separate program from, is that correct?
that is correct.
And is Melmark a substantially separate program from their, when I say substantially separate, we have the Quincy Public Schools, and this would be, is this Learning Center going to be a substantially separate program from the Quincy Public Schools?
Yes.
Okay, so it will it be underneath the supervision of the superintendent, however?
Yes, like all other schools are.
So it is a part of the Quincy Public Schools. How is it substantially separate? I guess I'm trying to understand that.
How it would be substantially separate.
Yeah, so in the Quincy Public Schools.
This is familiar, by the way.
Yeah, I know this is very familiar, everybody. So I'm just trying to understand, when we are talking about a program, like and I understand the principle behind this, so maybe you can help me understand how the functionality works. When we're talking about the AP program at Central, it's integrated, we have neighborhood and AP. So we have advanced placement at Central Middle School, and we have, it's a fully integrated program because you have the neighborhood schools. So you can run that program, even though everybody in the world wants you to do it in 5 different middle schools, including myself, so that everybody gets the opportunity to participate in that program. It was just, that's the way the program was built. In this particular case, what we're talking about is, and we had talked about it while I was on the school committee, but we were talking about something much different than this, but things change. What we were talking about was a language-based learning facility. Language-based meaning that if we were to have the facilities to be able to do this in, it would be integrated in, so all students would be able to benefit from the programs, that the programmatic needs of that. So it would be an integrated school with specialty services there. This has been targeted for, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the population is for autistic students, correct?
Primarily, yes, and then we have the integrated pre-kindergarten programs that would not necessarily be autistic-based.
But it's the pre-K program as opposed to, so Quincy Public Schools has pre-K offerings, but mandatory classrooms are from kindergarten through 12th grade as of right now for public school settings, correct? For your graduation purposes. So pre-K is, am I wrong about that? Pre-K is separate from the K-12 program, which is what's.
Oh, we like to say we're pre-K to 12.
We are pre-K to 12, but what I'm saying is, you know, if you do not enroll your student until kindergarten, you've met the requirements
That's correct.
of graduation that you like
That
to
is
say,
correct.
when you graduate, this is what you've met the requirements of what?
Yes.
Okay, so pre-K, as much as I would love to see pre-K as being a mandatory thing for all kids to go, because I think that would be great, we have a pre-K program in the city of Quincy that services both, it's a half-day program that services anybody who wants to apply to it, but it also services a high population of need as well, correct? So that's the integrated program part of the K-12. Is there any other integration in the program for the students? other than
Integrated with general education, you mean? No.
No. So I guess this is where it gets tricky for me, because how does that meet, and I just help me understand that, so you know where I'm going, right? How does that meet the least restrictive environment for a student? So if a parent has a student that they want to be in the neighborhood school and be offered these services, and you say, you know, nope, this is the best place for them to go, is the new learning facilities. But they want their child to be with their peers. How does that work?
Well, the interesting thing is that at a collaborative, they would not have the ability to do that.
No, but
Well,
in a collaborative situation, it's a choice, because you're going out of district to the collaborative, correct?
Well,
Correct me, I don't.
let me try to answer your first question, and then you can follow up with it. But, I mean, I think what we're looking at is if students, higher functioning students need to be included, we'll get them to their home school, not just a school. We'll get them to their home elementary school or home middle school. You know, so we do have that ability to integrate or include when it's appropriate, which would be the least restrictive
So
environment.
how does that work? So help me understand that. So you're saying if my home school is?
Marymount.
Where? Marymount?
We would transport them to Marymount either for the morning or the afternoon, and then see where we go as far as how much inclusion is the right thing for the student. So the benefit of this is that the integration piece, the inclusion piece is right there in Quincy, at our home.
So they're going to be taken out of their Marymount school at some point during the day, or they could start the day at this learning facility and
Most of
then,
these students that we're talking about are already out of the mainstream.
okay.
So this would be an.
I understand that. I guess I'm trying, so that's by purpose of the IEP or purpose of
Correct.
the parents who want to go out of district, and now we're bringing it in district. I'm trying to understand, when you bring it in district, it's very similar, so I'm trying to understand, are we creating in some ways, we're creating our own little charter school for special education, potentially, right? Without calling it.
There's nothing to do with charter school.
No, I know. Well, I have two different
Just
people.
to let you
You're
know.
saying no, and
Well,
Ms.
if I-
Perkins is saying yes to me, so
You're saying yes, and I'm saying no. It's a public separate day school.
maybe Ms. Perkins can help me by explaining that to me, so.
Sure.
Sorry. I'm not trying, and I know, you miss me. I know you miss me. I know you do. I know you do.
There's an application process. It's considered a public separate day school, which is also what a collaborative is.
Okay.
It's a public separate day school. It's absolutely licensed through the Department of Education. There's an intensive application process that we've already submitted the intent to apply.
I saw it in the package.
Yep.
I was
Yeah.
like, this is a softball. I
It's
think.
not a charter. The superintendent is absolutely correct. It's not a charter.
Right.
But it is similar to a collaborative model.
So I guess what I wanted to say is that this is something, so when people will say, are we creating something this is something that a parent would choose for their student. And I just use charter, for example, because it's something that you have to opt into. And currently, right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but currently, right now, we have the pre-K at De La Chiesa that has the highest population of autistic, I could be wrong, but I think it's at both schools, and it's not correct. And then we have the CARES program that is throughout several different, 5 other sites, correct? And currently, that's where you're getting that's where you'd be getting the first group of people that would be coming into the system. And how many students would that be?
We're nodding together on that.
Yeah, we're
one.
not.
Yes, go
You are not, I'm sorry, but you weren't. I was like, you're not, okay. I'm sorry.
Yes, you're correct.
You're going to get in trouble later. Okay, I'm just kidding. How many students are we talking about in the CARES program and in the pre-K and K? I know you've answered this question already, but,
Yeah, so there's about somewhere around 80 students that are in the CARES program at De La Chiesa, and probably another 80, 85 at Snug Harbor, and then about 24 at Squantum and 24 at Southwest Middle School.
and the 175 are pre-K and K? I mean, pre-K, right? They're the pre-K students?
At De La Chiesa, they're
Yeah.
all pre-K.
They're all pre-K, and the same thing with Snug, or
Snug Harbor is K to 5, Squantum is K to 5, and Southwest is 6 to 8.
okay. And then when you said, I think there was at one point that we said, so this is mostly for the students where we're talking about, it's kids on the spectrum with autism. Were there any other learning disabilities that will be in this particular facility? Or will it just be specifically?
Aaron, help yourself.
So it's, not right now. We're primarily focusing on autism and taking it one step at a time. But, I mean, I think there is the potential, hopefully, for, maybe students with intellectual impairments or multiple disabilities.
Okay. So, but just to be completely clear, because I just want to make sure, I was not able to make it to that meeting on the 6th, and I feel terrible that I couldn't, but I just couldn't go. So, language-based learning so when we talk about language-based learning disabilities, in the past, this would not be part of this learning facility.
Correct.
Okay, just want to be completely clear about that, because that is something that many parents send their students out of district for as well. And I know we do a lot in the program for that, too. So when we talk, now if we could move on to talking about the facilities itself and who will be teaching. Will there be generalists or specialists that will be in this building?
All specialists, all licensed.
All specialists, all licensed. And it will be a 12-month program?
Yes.
Unlike any other program we have in the city of Quincy, this will be a 12-month program. And so that means you'll have 2 weeks off in the summer, and they'll share the same vacation times the rest of the year, potentially?
Yeah, I think it depends on, again, the individual educational plan, you know, but I think for the most part, they'll have the regular breaks, of course.
They'll have the Christmas break,
Yes.
the February, March break, and then summer will be on.
Schedule, except the summer is going to be unique, yes.
Okay, so summer program will be unique. And then the program will run from standard operational hours for classrooms from,
Yeah, I think that may have been in the PowerPoint, I'm not sure, but just to say that we have Central Middle School, then you have Campus Kinderhouse as well, and we're trying to get a time that would not be as, you know, conflictive with those times.
but will it be extended day, or will it be regular, will it be a regular 6.5-hour day or an extended day?
Yeah, regular day.
Right, so, okay, and then you'll have the after.
And then the
potential-
extended day that we're looking at as well, beyond the bell.
Okay, and this will be all included in so if you're a Quincy Public School resident, if you're a Quincy resident, your taxes will cover that whole day program and after-school program? Because it's public school, so
Yes.
I just want to make sure there's no fee, it's no fee-based.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And same thing with the after-school that we're talking about, or we don't know?
Oh, I think it's the after-school program's the same.
Same thing with after-school. I just want clarification. I'm not trying to trick anybody, I'm just trying to get some clarification. And then when we talk about out-of-district, or when we talk about bringing people back from district, that will be optional for people.
Yes.
Once the program's up and operational. And I could be wrong, but I know at one point, I watched a little bit of a school committee meeting, not the whole thing, so I can't quote this, but I know that we were talking, or maybe it could have been the press conversation where we were talking about how we would open this up for out-of-district. So how do you open it up for out-of-district specifically? Because that's something we vote on, or you voted on every year as a school committee member. We do not
No,
accept out-of-district, so.
No, it's got nothing to really with the choice that we vote on.
Okay, that's why
every
I just want to make sure, because I'm trying to understand how that works.
It goes back to the.
Day
public-
program, the option in.
Yes, that gives us the permission, basically, to deal with another school system with tuitioning in to our center.
Is that something that you're anticipating doing right away as well, or are you going to build a program first?
I think we're going to settle our program first and take care of our own students first to see where we go with that. But we've already had a couple of calls to say, are you open from other school systems, so.
So I was on the school committee for a really long time, and I know that this is something that, but when we were talking about things, it was more language-based learning facility that would be an ideal thing that you would love to have opened, education changes. So could you give us, I don't know if you have the statistics, and this will be what Jim Timmons would say, I should have called you earlier, and I apologize for not calling you earlier. For autism in the city of Quincy, how many more students a year are we talking about that we're servicing in-house, and how many more students a year? This might be a Jim Mulaney question that we send outside the system. And these are because there's all different spectrums of autism, so these would be the more likely students that we would keep in-house if we could.
You're talking about more of the trends, you know, I mean, why don't you talk about that for a second? That's kind of where we were and where we are.
Yeah, so the CARES classes, I can, just kind of give you an example that when I started, there were 3 CARES classrooms at Snug Harbor, there's now 8. So we add CARES classrooms every single year. We added 1 this year as well. And in terms of out-of-district students, it's the second largest population of our out-of-district students, the first being social emotional, second being autism. So there's somewhere around, I think, about 60 children that are out of district currently right now, maybe a few more. So it has grown exponentially, you know, in the last few years. You know, Dela Chiesa is up to getting close to about 100 students. You know, they test students, like I said, all year long. So I told you that there was, you know, around 80 students currently at Dela Chiesa. There are 30 students that are scheduled to be tested with autism diagnoses coming through the doors of Quincy Public Schools between now and March.
Okay.
So it's a growing population, and it's one that, you know, has great need, and that we need to work on providing them the best for.
Thank you. So in the population, in the building itself, it can fit 300 total students, is what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think to begin with, that should.
And how many teachers or how many specialists do you think would be needed to run a program of 300 students?
So I think, I think we'll have to work with families and see, you know, how many students are attending and how many students are coming back from out-of-district placements, but.
Just because instead of talking about what we're going to start with and what you're hoping to start with, I guess what I'm trying to say is the building is 300, maximum capacity of 300 students. Are we talking about 30 teachers? Are we talking about, how many teachers do you anticipate for that? Just a rough guesstimate. I'm not going to hold you to it, I'm just,
25, yeah.
Yes.
would they also then have pairs with them, or is that, and the pairs, is the pair one-on-one, or is it depends?
On the needs of the student, but our ideal ratio is a 3-to-1 ratio, so 3 students to every 1 staff.
Okay, and then no, I guess this goes back, now this is going to go to the financial piece, so I think that's, thank you, Erin, and thank you, Dr. Christopher. So when you're building out your building, it's the building maintenance, did you say that you do or you do not have staff included in this?
Staff is included in this.
Staff is included, and when you built it out, what was your ratio for staff?
So our first model was for if we bring 40 kids over initially, that works out to about one teacher. We did about a 1 to 10 ratio. So it'd be 4 teachers and then 4 paras per 10 students. So you'd have be 40 kids, so you'd have 4 teachers, then another 16 paras. So it's 20 total.
You did it backwards. All right, so 20 in total.
That also includes some administrative staff, office staff, there's custodial staff.
And this might be, I'm sorry, this might be a question for Rick, and this is kind of a combination thing. So when we talk about these kind of collaboratives and the programs that we have, it's kind of in that particular setting, it's kind of everybody's trained the same way. So would your custodial workers and lunch workers, and would everybody be trained to be able to work with the population? I'm just asking because oftentimes when you go out, when a child is placed in out of district, it becomes it's just different. It's from everything from the way they teach in the classroom to the way they are served their lunch to the way they to every person they interact with in the building. So in this particular case, it's definitely a different model. So I just want to make sure when we're talking about that.
No, it's a great point. You know, to create that culture that you see, like, if you visited the Emilio Dela Chiesa, that's the culture that's there. And everyone understands why they're there and how they can help in all different ways, so you're absolutely right. So the training, you know, we look at extensive training for our teachers, absolutely, but our paraprofessionals as well. The custodians need to understand, you know, what their role is in those buildings. That may be quite different than other buildings. That'll be fine. And then the parents as well. So there'll be a lot of professional development. And again, you're absolutely right. It's a culture that everyone needs to be rowing in the same absolute direction.
Okay. So, I get worried, the only thing I get worried about this, I get worried about is that, you know, it would have been nice, this is kind of the building came before the program. And, you know, and I absolutely know from being on the educational side of things is that, you know, you certainly as a superintendent and as a leadership team with opportunities, you would never say, no, thank you. If somebody's going to offer you a building, you're going to say, we'll make it work or something, we'll go there, right? And in this particular case, you know, you had your press conference, and I'm going to ask you some more financial questions, but one of the things that bothered me about the press conference was that you had to stop every 2 minutes to 3 minutes because a train would go by. And when we're talking about a high-risk population, sensory overload is, as we talked about, having quiet rooms, and they do it at Gillette Stadium, so everybody knows, everybody can go, even adults can go to the quiet room at Gillette Stadium now if you're at a football game, because everybody needs a break. I am very curious to know how does that work in this building? And I'm sorry, because this just spurred a question separate from the finances, so.
If I could.
Yeah.
It really is, it's quite muffled inside. But even muffling may be, you know, very, very kind of a sensory issue for some of our children. Many have headphones, may not be the right term, headphones that they wear on a very regular
Sound
basis.
silencing,
Yes, yeah, so, but it is quite muffled, so I don't know whether there's extensive insulation, and you know, I would not know that.
I wouldn't know.
No, but, so I think it is muffled, but outside it was very distracting.
Yeah, so I guess I get concerned, because even if you're putting a playground on the back half of it, my concern immediately becomes to that sensory overload, because, you know, I just know that for the best, for even people with, first of all, I think everybody should be on an IEP. We test to the MCAS, which is really an IEP. In the end, everybody has an individual education plan, and we don't do that. This would be a building that's specialized for kids with high sensory issues, and it's the volume that those trains were, and it was being picked up because it was being amplified, is still very loud, and the vibration that comes with it. So even in the back, you can hear that. So I'm just curious to know how you're going to deal with that.
Well, first, I'm not sure about the vibration. I'm not an expert in that in any way.
Well, sound vibration, that's what I meant.
But
is-
certainly, you know, we need to deal with, we're going to have that playground in back for our students. We need to make sure that they equipped, that it's not going to really be hurtful to them in any way through sensory. So we'll have to deal with that as we do it, as we go forward.
Okay. All right, so that was truly my last, because all of a sudden I just came up, when you came up, I thought about that. So, to ask the financial questions, Paul, were you going to answer something? Sorry.
And I don't want to interrupt you if you're on the flow. I can
That's
just
okay.
come back.
That's right.
Okay. One of the design elements of the building with the architect is sound attenuation within the building as well. I just mentioned that.
Sorry, is what?
Sound attenuation within
Yep.
the building. And to answer one of the early questions about the square footage of the building, it was pointed out to me that, and I had forgotten, the materials that were distributed on Friday, they detail the square footage of the building, the two combined buildings with the common atrium area at 57,243 square feet. And while sitting here with Google Earth, I did a count of the parking spaces based upon the description of the parcels from Solicitor Timmons, and there's over 100 spaces available, and I'm advised that the school department estimates they need 90, so there is a surplus of spaces. And if I may, I would like actually to apologize to Solicitor Timmons, sitting there making fun of his handicap when we're discussing people whose needs are handicaps.
Oh, I was
That
making
was
fun of him.
inappropriate of me, and I
Oh, I thought you were
apologize.
saying I was. I was going to say, I wasn't making fun of him.
Are you all,
I know, I thought you said.
Are you all set?
Yeah, no, I actually have the financial question, so, thank you. Just to be fair, Mr. Timmons, my dad wears one around his neck, so I think it's amazing what they can do. The finale question is that for the finances, so when we have this broken out, you have I understood what you were saying before, 6% of growth for potential cost of outside placement, 3% internal, so over the time, we should be able to save more money. But we don't have a full program built out, so I guess I'm trying to understand how you are building this out, how you're building this out and what it's based on. So in your first year, are you basing it on 40 students, or are you basing it on 300 students?
40 students.
And then the second year, what are you basing it on?
Continue with a 40 basis until
So you're
the
just
program
doing
bans Dukes May.
40
Yes.
until when?
The model is built out continuously at that 40 number.
Okay.
So part of it is that when it comes to any sort of modeling endeavor, you model off what you best know.
Mm-hmm.
And with the initial program rollout of 40, that's how you have to build out the program. That's a common practice in modeling. You base it on the phase one process. And as we begin to expand the program, and that becomes more of a financial analysis performed on that, you expand with the program.
So you're phasing it off of phase one and the purchase price of the building and the $1.7 million for the build-out?
Yes, but some of the material you have also shows scenarios of 12.5, 15, 10.5, 9.
It does, I'm sorry, say that again, some of the scenarios.
So some of the you included in the packet given on earlier, it includes different scenarios that show, well, what can the building afford on that 40-student basis, what that build-out can be brought to. So, for example, if we build out, including acquisition costs, $15 million, we're still saving several $100,000 a year. Again, that's the, modeling is not meant to be an exact science. What it's meant is to give you an idea of a gradient of where a situation can fall. And that's what's done in this endeavor.
Okay, so when, does it also include, and this will sound negative when I say this, but does it also include legality issues when parents start to, if parents decide they don't want to be in the program, they want to go out of district, but the district thinks they should be in district and turns into, do we know what we're talking about? So is that included?
Well, generally speaking, litigation is included in the legal budget for the city.
Is litigation, no, not the legal, I think is litigation included in the legal budget for schools, or I thought it was? We have a legal department, right? So it's not, that's substantially separate from the city side. When I say legal issues, I'm talking about when a family wants to be out-district placement, but the school system says, we do not have to send you out-district because we offer a program in-house, therefore you can go to this program in-house, and then it turns into, that does sometimes happen, right? So I guess what I'm asking, is that also included in this?
No, it's not. But we don't include, we don't have a legal budget for litigation in the police department or the fire department or any other department of the city. Even expressed on the tax rate recap on page 2 is if there's
But we have to
deficits.
have, so this is different, because in the school system, because we don't have to, because in the city side, we don't have to, because if we go over a budget that we have in our legal budget line item, we can go over that just like snow and ice, and if we do, we have to figure out how we're going to pay for that. But in the school side, what I'm trying to say is that there's sometimes, we do have a legal budget in the school side, and if we go over that budget, we have to find that money someplace else. Is that correct?
No, it's raised similarly on the tax rate recap.
I think, Counselor, what we do, if we have situations like that, we have our in-house, and that's the one-man show of.
Yeah, I know, it's
Mr.
Kevin Mulvey.
So, we save thousands and thousands of dollars that way.
I know we do.
No, just to let you know, that's how we deal with it.
Yeah. No, I know, I know we do, but what I'm trying to say, though, is that in this particular case, what we have, we have 40 students that we have, and I'm not trying to play devil's advocate, because that's what I have to do on this side before we go ahead and say yes to something. Is this a program, is this something that we can do? Yes. Is there potential, situations where people, as much as people do not want to go out of district, there are going to be families that have a diagnosis that want to, and no matter what we're servicing, they may not want to be in the Quincy Public Schools, but we have to, I forget what it's called, but free, is it far, is it, what's the, thanks, they said it, what was it? No. So when that happens and somebody wants to send their student out of district, what I'm trying to find out is, and I understand what you're saying in regards to the finances, but I'm also trying to say is that that's something that also, it's a hidden cost. And that we have to take into consideration when we're looking at the full picture. Because if we're not, when we're saying we're saving $350,000, that could be 10 families that want to go out of district, and that $350,000 is no longer saved. And it's 10 families isn't very many, so when you're doing this. And for the most part, I anticipate families may want to stay in district, but then there's going to be the families that don't, because they think, much like any diagnosis, when you get a diagnosis for your family member, you want the best for your student. And if you do not think the best is here, you're going to want to go to maybe the Haragashi, or you're going to want to go to another program. And those conversations are never pleasant, and they are not easy. And when we have a program that we would have here, you're going to think our program is best served, but some people aren't going to want to take that risk. And the people who are already out of district can stay out of district. But this no new program that you have that's not proven because we don't have a program yet, people may be wary of it. And you, as a superintendent, will have to say, no, we have a program, and then it could lead to litigations down the road. I'm asking, is that part of the savings that the city is looking at? Because there's a formula that goes with that as well. So is that formula included in this savings?
I'd say probably right now that our $200,000 in marginality costs that are included, based on the project size, we always have a marginality aspect to it, which is basically.
So now you're saying that you do have one, but before you said you didn't.
No, I'm saying is that there's marginality in it. Marginality is different than you're talking about specificity, which is separate than marginality.
I know.
Marginality is a division of itself, where specificity is being able to point out exact variable, which does not exist in this. So
But it
there's
can,
always going to be
'cause-
frictional costs.
Yeah, but again, it should probably, I would say that it should be built into your cost program marginality or not, because you could go back and look at the last 10 or 15 years of the Quincy Public Schools, and we could actually, even with the savings that you've had, how many that you've had, and what the potential costs were. Because when you're bringing a program in-house, as opposed to, there's going to be many people, like I said, who will be excited about that program being there, but then there's going to be many people who have not had the best experience that I know the Quincy Public Schools tries to offer, but may not feel that warm, fuzzy feeling, and it's just not going to work for them. So, and then it turns into, and hopefully it doesn't, but I'm a realist, and I know that it's not, we've always had the best interest of our students in mind, but it doesn't always go down the path of the best interest. So I guess I err on the caution of how much, when you say you're going to save, I don't necessarily know if that's the best way to look at something and say, we're going to save exponential amounts of money off of a program by doing this, because you're also opening yourself up to potential issues that were unforeseen, and that should be part of the formula when looking at these things.
This is why marginality exists in modeling.
And Counselor, I'm sorry, you've been speaking for 30 minutes, and we
Nope, I
still have
got
a
it.
few other folks to ask questions. So if you have any more specific questions that can be answered, thank you very
That was just going to
much.
be wrapping it up. Thanks for saving them.
If, one thing though that would be useful, Eric, is providing us with, because this kind of exists on its own, having a list of assumptions that you,
Absolutely.
made to put this together. Because I have some similar questions, especially around some of these additional costs. I think this is overall a great project, but I think when this stands alone, I think it's a little intimidating, and having an understanding of what numbers you put in to make assumptions is useful. Councilor Palmucci.
Thank you. Eric, first of all, I just want to make a couple of points, and then my question's for you. But just in general, thank you for all the work you guys have done putting this program together, and I'm sure it's not an easy thing to kind of craft from scratch. But for me, any proposal that brings our students back into the district to be educated is a home run. I mean, so much of our community is based out of the schools and activities out of the schools, and a sense of belonging. I mean, DeBona still talks about being a graduate of Sterling. Every time it comes up, it's a part of who you are when you grow up in Quincy, and it's something that just deeply ingrains you into the community. So, it kind of saddens me to think that we can't educate all, and that's a reality, but that we send students out of district at all. So any chance we can to bring those students back, for them, for their families, and for the community in general, I think it's a home run. So, you had me at hello with this thing. I'm fully supportive. As it comes, as a policy, I 100%. It just comes down to the money. It's always all about the money. We would do a lot more if we just said you guys had an unlimited budget, or here's $100 million, you'd dazzle us with what you would come up with. We don't have the money to do it, though. So Eric, I just wanted to talk to you about debt. So it was a couple of years ago, right, that we did the financial best practices that this body adopted. And one of the things that we agreed on as a city, with the mayor and the city council, was that we were going to have a range of debt as a percentage of our annual operating budget, right?
Correct.
Do you recall what percentage that was?
7.5%.
7.5%, okay. And that was based on some input from our other people, right? Senator McNerney, the bond council, and some of the best practices that are implemented across the Commonwealth and the country, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so you're comfortable, and bond council is comfortable with the 7% number as being the percentage of debt we carry per year?
Yes, some, actually, if you Standard & Poor's, they actually would like a higher number, but they're the people telling us to borrow, so they're usually not the best people to get advice from.
Right. Thank you for the financial crisis, Standard & Poor's. But,
There's also Moody's.
yeah, right. So historically, 7% has not been the percentage of debt service that we carry in a budget. It's actually been much lower, right?
Much lower.
Okay, and so that, and what was this, 3 years ago that we did this?
Yeah, it's about 3 years ago.
3 years ago. So we're, what were we, 12 years into the mayor's administration, Chris? Is that about where we're at? Yeah, 12 years in? That is correct, sir. Yeah, 12 years in, so so for the first 9 years, it wasn't the policy, but for the last 3 years. And one of the reasons I bring this up is obviously, how do we pay for this? You know, we're using debt. Can we withstand that debt? Can we service that debt? What does that mean to our obligations moving forward? But I think it's important to kind of bring us up to speed in terms of context for this discussion, right? So we agree or perhaps we all agree it's a good policy. And then it comes down to being able to service the debt. And I guess I raised the mayor's been in office for 12 years because we've done a lot of things, but we've done a lot more things more recently, right? And that's a function of this policy that we developed. Again, the reason I was thinking of it, I got an email over the weekend from a constituent who essentially their main point was like, listen, you borrow a lot of money, always borrowing to build these things. And, and I read it, I thought about it, I responded to it, and I've been thinking about it since for the past couple of days, which is, yeah, we have borrowed a lot of money, and we have done a lot of good things, and of course, we could do a lot more if we borrowed more, but there has to be that happy median, that equilibrium of what we can support in terms of providing services or building out the infrastructure. So the historical percentage of debt in our budget has been lower. So we're at what now?
So we're at, when you include offsets, for example, DIF, hotel motel tax, CPAs, stuff with a dedicated revenue that exists outside the burden of the taxpayer, we're about 6% even, 5.94, I think is the exact number.
Okay, and we've ramped up from, do you remember what it was roughly 3 years ago?
About 3 years ago, I think we were about 5.7. We did have a substantial amount of debt fall off.
Right,
Debt's-
there was a CDBG debt from the shipyard, right?
So, and that wasn't often, that was a smaller nominal number because there was a substantial offset from the community block development grant. But different individual projects like that have rolling off. And debt is rarely a static picture. So, we meet with bond counsel and rating agencies about 2 times a year to go through this. And every time we bring a new thing in front of the council, it gets added into the model, both short-term and long-term. And Deb Coughlin and I have plenty of discussions to make sure we're on the same page because she monitors the schedule and I attach the forecast to it. It's kind of a two-prong attack. But historically, we've been about 5.7 to 6 even, once you're counting offsets.
Okay.
And that doesn't include water and sewer. They're their own separate press funds.
So you say, you tripped me up with something. You said debt is static. The picture of debt is static, but the source of the debt is dynamic. Right? Yeah.
I misspoke. I said it's not static.
Oh, it's not static.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
all right. Because I was trying to justify that in my head because it's always changing. It's not a solid limit. So in this particular year, we might be on the last payment of a bond that was for, I don't know, I'm trying to think of stuff that we built a while ago. What's
We're
something?
doing Beechwood Knoll School
Okay,
back when I was a kid living at
Right,
Fenno
so for the
Street.
Beechwood
It's
Knoll
just
School.
paid off.
And so when that debt falls off, we don't have a hearing about it. It's not advertised in the city council agenda. There's no newspaper articles about it and Facebook posts about this debt falling off. It doesn't get publicized in any sense that, okay, well, this debt has fallen off. We paid this bill. It's like a credit card. You have 3 credit cards, right? And one has a balance, the other 2 don't. When you pay the first credit card off and it's at 0, you might feel like you can then use credit card number 2 to buy something else, right? And so that's what this debt falling off and then reutilizing that same debt space in what we're typically paying. That's what we're talking about as a percentage of the budget on an ongoing basis. So when one debt piece or portion of debt falls off, meaning it's paid in full, we pick up another piece. And that would be how this would fall in line with our annual budgets, right? This particular project.
Absolutely.
All right, and what would be the move in terms of the percentage of the overall budget that this project would have in terms of debt percentage?
So in terms of just debt service, because the savings also factors in operational expense, which obviously doesn't go to debt service.
Right, and the savings is $350,000 a year approximately?
Yeah, conservatively.
Yeah.
If we end up bonding this entire note for, we end up doing about the 8.5 million, just say start with that. We'd be looking at about, from a bonding standpoint, somewhere in the neighborhood of about $600,000, $700,000. On a $325 million budget, you're talking about moving at about 0.02%, 0.05%, somewhere in that ballpark. I can get an exact number.
No, that's good enough. You're to the 10th of the percent, I'm
don't know
willing
about
to spot
precision.
you the 0.3, the 0.03 there. But, I mean, just to put it in context, because I think it's important, right? So we're talking about a really dynamic program that we're going to add that's going to help kids, and it's, you have the policy and then you have the debt. And to me, the way I see this is that we can afford this, right? This doesn't jack up the debt to the point where you are going to be back here answering questions from me or anybody else up here saying, well, how can we stick it to the seniors of Quincy and make them pay, X amount in a tax increase, right? We've been able to maintain this same level of debt. We've been able to build a tremendous amount of important things around here, from schools to infrastructure to a city, to a new old city hall. So it's important that, we're using debt, but there's a lot of debt that's falling off, and our debt percentage is being maintained at a relatively stable rate. So I don't want to say it doesn't cost anything, because it obviously has a cost, but it's a budgeted cost. So when folks see that they read newspaper articles, or they're watching this hearing, and they read the council agenda, oh, the council's borrowing money again. It's not as if we're adding to the debt load that we're taking, because the debt service is falling off in other areas, and we're maintaining what our fiscal principle was agreed upon several years ago, that we'll maintain a debt ratio level of around, you said 7%. I'm pretty sure I didn't vote for that, but I was okay, I think, with the 6 or the 5 or something, but the same level that we maintain on a consistent basis. So it's not adding on. It's not in the aggregate. So I'm going to support this because I think it's a good policy, a great policy. I love giving these guys money because I feel like it's like the library. When we give the library or the Council on Aging and our senior services, when we give them money, we get such a return on our dollar. It makes the city so much better. Every dollar we spend on our schools, every dollar we spend on the library, those are the kind of things that really bring people into the community and make them just have a good quality of life, just really improves quality of life. So to me, the policy is a no-brainer, and I wanted to walk through the kind of the debt service issues with you. I'm satisfied with that, and so I'll be voting in favor of it, and I just want to thank you again. I really like having you around. You're very good at what you do. I don't know if you lie a lot, like in your personal life, but I never feel like you're lying to me up here.
I try not,
Yeah. No, I mean, when I talk to Timmons or Paul, I mean, I always feel like
Best
I
comment
can't
I've got
believe a
on my job.
word that they're saying, but I always trust you.
Walker, you take
Yeah.
notice, this is how you motivate people.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Counselor Kroll.
Tough to recover from that one. Oh, my gosh. Thank you, team, for being here. And, I know I had shared with some of the folks, the members of the school administration prior to the meeting, and I'll just say it publicly. The author of this report, Aaron, I actually believe that this should be the gold standard. You uphold this going forward for any type of presentation regarding this. This is like straight data, hard concrete facts. I spent the weekend going through it, where I show up in a format like this, and I feel like I have a pretty good understanding as to what the ask is now and sort of what the path is going forward. And I want to kind of commend the council here as well for their in-depth conversation points here. The way that I view this, like right out of the box, I'm fully supportive. I think that it's a game changer in the community. I think that it increases, the quality of life for the citizenry, across the city. And as we continue to kind of grow and chart the path forward and really write the new chapter in the city's history, I think it's important that we're investing in items such as, learning centers of this magnitude. Obviously, the financing is certainly a large part of the conversation. But, I had heard from several families who would essentially benefit from the services and, unequivocally, fully supportive of what we're trying to do here. I just think it's another reason, for people to want to come and stay in the city of Quincy. And, I often think of that quote, which, you hear it a lot, but an investment in education pays the best interest. And I think that, that kind of expands itself right into here. I think the, the city, both the administration, city council, school committee, I think we do a fabulous job in putting our money where our mouth is when it comes to, education. As a parent of a young child, too, I just think the foundational experience is so important, getting to kids early and often and, providing these services in our city. Just again, it's another step forward to becoming that Quincy that I think people expect these days. I guess final, just because Palmucci got me going on the financial policies, and I know I've kind of beat the drum on those a little bit too, but Eric, just it's quick, and you probably can't answer this either, but obviously there's a ton of skilled personnel that'll be part of this program, and I think it was about a $1.7 million addition to, payroll. And when we contemplate financial policies, and I know we'll be having this discussion in the next week or so, part of that is, the city's attitude and position as it relates to contributing to things such as, pensions and benefits, which are important. I'm assuming that there is some in-depth conversations with the creation of this type of center and, the onboarding of additional payroll, that we will be honoring the chart that we've laid out for ourselves, right? You guys presented us policies. So that will be contributing in those two buckets.
Yeah, so if you're talking about the benefits package, that the 1.7 million in new payroll.
Right, I mean, I guess what I'm looking to hear is that we're going to continue to, pick up and make those contributions to things such as OPEB.
Yes.
Is that an internal discussion?
It absolutely is. OPEB is becoming.
That's important.
More.
Yeah.
Yes, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
It's appearing more and more frequently on every ratings call, not just.
That is.
Yeah,
that is what they're pointing out on every ratings call.
Yeah, I'm one of the nerdy parts about me is I actually get a daily update from Moody's that just does municipal reports, and they talk about general trends throughout the bonding process for municipalities. And the lower rated cities, people who are AA2s and stuff, Moody's uses a different rating system.
I'm familiar with it, yeah.
They are starting to call that out more and more often. We are fortunate we have such a heavy excess levy capacity. It's fourth highest in the state, that Standard & Poor's understands that we do have a better liquidity position than most municipalities.
Right, but when we also talk about excess levy capacity, that's not really a conversation that the city council is, always open to going down. We could tax at a higher rate. Yeah.
They want us to borrow more. That's
right, and I
they get
think
paid
that,
for
to
yeah.
Council Palmucci's point, municipal finance, a large portion of it is, essentially bonding, right? I mean, the credit agencies want to see that you're borrowing money, want to see that you're investing in roads and sidewalks and schools and, doing things to really bring your city or town to the next level. And I think that unequivocally we've been doing that. But I just bring that up because I know that that'll all be part of a future conversation, but it obviously part of your presentation to us here via the spreadsheet. And I do appreciate you kind of taking the time to really create stress tested scenarios, because I think that's important to contemplate what we're looking at today. But all right, well, there might be another couple $1 million added to the overall build out. What does that look like and can we handle it?
Yeah, it's a model that's only one line is not a useful model. That's my experience with that. It's different scenarios, the better.
So thank you, and thank you to the school department administration. I mean this, you guys are pros, and when you come here to present, your ducks are in order, everything's organized, structured, and I certainly appreciate it. So look forward to supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor Kroll. Thank you very much to the Dr. D and team for being here tonight. Appreciate your presentation. Public Buildings, Eric, as always, please send me those assumptions or send the group the assumptions so we can back up what we're most likely going to support tonight. This is a truly innovative project. This is forward-looking from an educational perspective. Quincy is so hot right now. People are grasping to live here because of our proximity to Boston, and people want to be closer to where they're going to work. We have access on the MBTA and 4 subway lines. And this is just another reason to move here. This is another reason to stay here and grow your families here. This is something that shows that Quincy is willing to take care of all the children of the city. So this is very forward-looking, and I appreciate this project very much. So there's a motion on the floor from Councilor DeBona to approve this bonding request. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Kroll. Yes. Counselor DeBona. Yes. Counselor Harris. Yes. Counselor Hughes. Counselor Liang. Yes. Counselor Mahoney. Present. Counselor McCarthy. Counselor Palmucci. Yes. Chairman Kane.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. And that concludes our Finance Committee meeting at 8:45.
All right, folks, we are bringing the meeting back to order. Could we please have the approval of previous meeting minutes from November 12th, 2019? All those in favor? Opposed? Ayes have it. Communications and reports from the mayor, other city officers, and city boards. Madam Clerk?
I do have a communication this evening for a grant of location for Mass Electric Verizon for Watkins Street. I will put this before us this evening for Public Works and advertise.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Does that conclude? Okey-doke.
It does.
Unfinished business and preceding meeting. Seeing none, reports of committees. Okay, Counselor, Chairman? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight, the Finance Committee held a session to discuss appropriation 2019-152 for $8.5 million for the acquisition of 178 Old Colony Avenue for Special Education Learning Center. Move for positive approval.
Motion made by Counsel Kane, second by Counsel DeBona. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Kane.
Yes.
Counselor DeBona. Yes. Counselor Harris. Yes. Counselor Liang. Yes. Counselor Mahoney. Present. Counselor Palmucci. Yes. President Kroll.
Yes.
6 members.
6 members voting in the affirmative.
Passes.
Counsel Kane, you all set? Good. Any other reports of committees? Counselors? Okey-doke. Presentations of petitions, memorials, and remonstrance. Seeing none? Motions, orders, and resolutions? Nothing there. All right. Scheduling of committee meetings and public hearings. We will be back in the City Council chamber on December 2nd with a ordinance committee meeting beginning at 6:30. Councilor Harris, I believe you have something as well, sir.
Yes, please. Thank you. I'd like to schedule a public hearing on Monday, December 16th at 7:25, petition for grant of location of Mass Electric for Watkins Street.
Excellent. Any other scheduling of committee meetings? Okay, seeing none, looking at you, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved at. Thank you all for coming.